And joining me now on the program is Art Del Cueto, Vice President, National Border Patrol Council. Art, there's probably not too many people in the entire nation better to answer my questions today on what the hell is happening at our United States border. Welcome to the show. How you doing, buddy?
I'm good, man. Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
So listen, I saw a post, a friend of the show, Sheriff Lamb, was down there with another guy, Dr. Phil, you were with down at the border. What was Dr. Phil doing down there?
He wants to bring awareness. You know, I sat there and I spoke to the guy, and I've been on his show before. I was on his show a couple of months ago. They were talking about immigration. I was on his show, and he just wants to bring awareness. I spoke to him, and because it caught me off guard. I said, "What are you doing?" And he goes, "Look, I understand that it's a mess, and I just want to be able to bring more awareness." So I think it's fantastic. It actually posted on my page, on my Instagram page, and I said, the megaphone just got bigger, which is what we're going to need so people can really understand how big of a mess it really is down there on the border.
You know, do you welcome public figures like Dr. Phil? I know Elon Musk a couple months ago did some content as well down on the border. Like these people that come down and they just want to find out, like put their eyes on it, get some information from the horse's mouth, so to speak, and find out what is happening there. Do you welcome that, even if you're not a politician, to come down and put your eyes on it and see what's happening?
I actually do. Look, the bigger the microphone, the better it is for all of us, so we can, get the message out and tell people how bad it is. But at the same time, look, you're asking a very good question. I think it's important that they come down here, but that they reach out to the people that actually know what's going on. Look, I'm not the be-all, end-all, but I can't say that I grew up on the border. I was raised on the border. I've worked on the border. I've been here my whole life. I'm not a transplant. I didn't show up one day and decide, hey, I want to do this. I've been on this border for 5 decades. Okay. So, I can tell you how bad it's been and how good it's been at times. And that's the thing. Hey, come one, come all, but reach out. People need to talk about it. And, they do different events. I've spoken at several events, around Arizona. I've got in California, everywhere. This is what I tell people. I believe in free speech so much that I'll go speak at your events for free. That's what it comes down to. And there's a lot, because there's a lot of people out there that want to make a buck out of this as well. They want to try to figure out how what's in it for them. How can they, make money off of these chaotic events on the border? So I think it's important that, come down here. Look at what's going on. The bigger the microphone, the better. But make sure you reach out to people that actually want to tell you what's going on, and they're not looking for just 15 minutes of fame.
Well, I might actually take you up on that. I'll shoot you a message on Instagram. I might come down and shoot some content and find out what's happening, because what we do on this show is we stand up for freedom of speech, Art, but we also stand up for understanding, and we try to not always put it through a political lens, but understanding the issues in our country. And today it's obviously what's happening at the border. There's some testimony going on really as we speak, saying that the Biden-Harris administration censored or ordered officers to not report certain types of data. What can you tell us about that?
Look, so I saw that story. I kind of criticized it a bit. Sometimes I get, a hard time because of it. But listen, look, it's difficult because members like myself and others within the National Border Patrol Council, we've been speaking up for a long, long time. We've been telling people how bad it is. We've been saying, hey, look, watch the numbers. They can't really count all the numbers. They can't count the gotaways. They can't count with the encounters. It's a mess. It's always been a mess. We've always spoken about it. And to be honest, I'm glad you have me on the show, and I'm glad you asked me that question, because it is upsetting when all of a sudden you get some of these individuals that retire, and then they retire. They're like, oh, well, let me tell you what they had me do. Well, why didn't you speak up when you were in that position of leadership? They kept their mouths quiet. They drank the Kool-Aid, as we say. They received the end of your bonuses. They got the promotions. They got everything they wanted. Even some guys that aren't in the management, they get the cushy details. But then once they are retired, they come out and say, I want to speak the truth. You should have done something when you're in a position of leadership. And it's frustrating because, like I said, some guys within the Border Patrol Council, we've been investigated for speaking the truth by some of the guys that all of a sudden wait till they retire to speak the truth. So it is frustrating, but it's not surprising because, as I said, we've been talking about it being a problem for quite some time.
Yeah, I think speaking the truth, when you are a man in the arena, you're right in it, boots on the ground. goes a lot further than speaking the truth. To your point, when you're retired and you just want to go up to DC and testify, it's not going to be as powerful, as impactful as actually saying what's happening in a number of situations when you're in the job.
Right, and that's the thing. Look, there's some of us within the council that can retire tomorrow, and we'll still keep fighting the fight. But we've been fighting that fight for a long time. It's been in our bloods to call it out. It's been in our blood to say, hey, this is the problem. We've been the ones that have suffered through investigations within the administration and agency itself because we've been speaking up. And I just think it's kind of a little bit easier, once they've promoted through the ranks. Obviously, their retirement is at a different level. They retire, they're making a lot more money than any of us are going to make when we retire. And now they chose to speak up. And I think, I don't know. You could have spoken up a long time ago. And you were comfortable not speaking up, in fact.
Art, what's been really fascinating to see is, politically speaking, right now on both sides of the aisle, nobody can deny that there is a massive problem, an emergency at our border. And a couple of years ago, if we were having this conversation, Art, it would have been a little different because the left was kind of belittling it and putting down people like yourself that were speaking out about what was happening. Now, Kamala Harris, Donald Trump, everybody agrees there's a problem. We might disagree on how to fix it, but we agree that there is definitely a problem at our border. So what is the number? I hear the number like 10 million illegal crossings floated out there. What is the timing on that? And in your estimation, how many illegal crossings have we actually had?
Look, I don't think that we can even put a number on how many we've actually had because the gotaways are the big factor. I've always talked about that. The gotaways are such a big factor, and it's such an unknown that even DHS has stopped putting out the number of gotaways. They stopped talking about gotaways altogether. They're saying, hey, estimated this, estimated that, but they don't put out a number monthly. And that's because the majority of the agents are stuck in the administrative roles. They're stuck in the processing centers. So there's really no one out there to count the gotaways. It's similar to, if a tree falls in the forest, and did it really make any noise if no one's there to hear it? And I think we're down to that positioning now when it comes to the gotaways themselves because there's no one out there to count them. And it is quite a mess. And you're right. Now both sides of the aisle are saying, hey, it's a problem. We need to fix it. The difference is the current administration, they're still in power, at least for, another couple months. And they could do something about it, and they've refused to do something about it. They'll put Band-Aids out there and they'll say, hey, well, we're doing this. We're minimizing these numbers. We're minimizing that. But realistically, they're not doing anything to stop it. Now, the numbers, have they gone down? The encounter numbers, you could say, have gone down. The gotaways, we don't know, again, because there's no one out there to count them, right? However, what people don't report, and I'm glad that you're out here in Arizona, one of the things that they don't report is just south of the border, in cities like Caborca, places near the border like Sonoita and Altar, Sonora, all those areas, they're going through a serious drug cartel war right now. What just happened? El Mayo Zambada just got arrested in El Paso. He's in U.S. custody. What does that do? That creates a huge power struggle. So right now they've been just at war fighting. So maybe that's, could be some of the factors of why the numbers have gone down. And I will say this, they've made tons of money. Anytime that your listeners and viewers, if they hear and they see the events that are happening in Mexico, and I post pictures on my Instagram, like I said, you'll see, gunfights every day. Do you know how much one box of 9mm rounds, a 50 round box of 9mm is going for in Mexico right now? It's going for $100 for 50 rounds. These people are spending a fortune. Why? Because they can spend a fortune, because under this current administration, they've made so much money by bringing in illegal aliens into the country, using them as a distraction, because now agents have to respond to that area. They got to transport, they have to, process. Sometimes they have to be stuck in the hospital with, the medical individuals. So all that while, they've been loading the country with heroin, methamphetamines, and fentanyl, lining their pockets. That's what this administration has allowed during these last 4 years.
You're in a leadership role within the National Border Patrol Council. So I have to ask you, do you have your eyes and ears pinned to what's happening on the other side of the border. You mentioned Mexico. We both know that there's a new president that's going to be taking office in Mexico. Do you look at like Mexican politics and follow that stuff? Do you have intel? Do you think that she will be able to do more to stop the cartels and to fight against the cartels, or is it just going to be sort of status quo?
So I do. I watch that, and I think it's not just because of my position within the National Border Patrol Council, or because of my positions that I've done within law enforcement. It's because I grew up on the border, right? And that's always interested me. I've always wanted to see what's going on. I want to see what's happening on the other side because it's at our doorstep. I think that Mexico right now, they're in such a failed state because of the drug violence and the cartels. This last election cycle, what is it? Well over 20 candidates were murdered during their election time. So it's a failed state down there. We're in for some trouble. And I don't see it being fixed anytime soon. At the same time, look, when you're seeing what's happening, when you're seeing the drug wars, when you're seeing no one stopping it, and when you're not really hearing anything from their politicians or even their media. I don't blame the media. They're scared. They kill them off. But you're not hearing anyone on that side saying, "Hey, there's a problem." If you look at the state of Sinaloa, the state capital of Culiacan, for the last 7 days, they've been under siege by the drug cartels, where no one can leave or enter the city itself. And we're talking about a city of over 1 million people. So when you're seeing that, and media hasn't covered it, no one's talked about it, and that's at our doorstep. And I think that's where the big problem is, that not enough people are aware of what's going on. And you're right. When you said at the beginning of the show, you're trying to get both sides of the aisle. Look, the drug cartels, they don't care who mom and dad voted for. They just want to bring drugs into the country and influence, the kids at the schools and everywhere else that they can, so they can make the money that they've been making.
So, Art, I want to be very sensitive with this topic, and I'm not insinuating anything. I'm really not. This next comment is probably going to get a lot of heat and smoke coming my way, but I'm going to do it because you're the guy to ask. And when I'm sitting at the bar or having dinner with buddies and we start talking politics and border, this is what I bring up. If we know, in fact, that there is a huge cartel problem on the other side of the border in Mexico, and pretty close, not like deep into Mexico, but in the immediate area, and we know that we have a national emergency, some say a quasi-invasion, and these immigrants are coming into our country, both sides agree, causing crime, et cetera, et cetera. At what point does the United States government say enough is enough and we need to take action? And you know what I mean. That means putting military, CIA, some sort of special forces on the ground across the border into Mexico to kind of clean up and take care of these cartels. Is that even in the cards, in the realm of possibilities? And I understand what I'm saying, and I know it's very delicate. We're talking about going into another country's land, essentially. Is that even in the cards?
Well, we did it in Colombia, right? Let's be realistic. They asked for help, they needed the help, and it was done. But I think, there's other measures that they haven't even tried here. They need to start looking at some of the outbound traffic. How many times do you see, hey, there's checkpoints in the United States, there are checkpoints for people that are further traveling into the U.S., they're looking for, illegal aliens that are coming further into the country. But I think they need to start putting some of these checkpoints, or at least start checking some of the south traffic. Because if there's drugs coming north, if there's people coming north, if there's, criminals coming north, all this stuff that's coming north, well, somehow the money's going south. So something's taking it south, and I think they need to beef up in that area. They need to start looking at some of the operations at the ports of entries themselves and start looking at some of that southbound traffic and see what's going south and really hit them where it hurts. You got to hit their pocketbooks, and at the same time, you hear the whole conversation, and it makes great headlines. I tell you what, people get upset when I'm going to say what I'm about to say. So I guess we're both just going to upset a lot of people today. I hear a lot of people say you have to deem them a terrorist organization. Look, the minute you deem them a terrorist organization, it's going to make it that much easier for people from Mexico that live in that place to be able to claim some asylum because they're in a terrorist nation. What you need to do is, when you start catching these people northbound, when you start catching and do operations of individuals going southbound, you got to hit them with RICO acts. Go after their money, go after their housing, go after, the friends that associate with them and do the same business that they do. That's what you do. You got to hit them in their pocketbooks. That's how you're going to make a dent.
And to play devil's advocate against myself, my own point, I guess if we did cross over the border and took some sort of military special forces action against the cartels, when I bring this up with people that are much more educated on the topic like yourself, they say, Billy, you don't know what you're asking here. these cartels are extremely powerful with major weapons and big numbers and a lot of money behind them. You're talking about starting a war on our border.
You basically are, but hasn't the war already been started? I mean, there's different types of wars. There's wars that's fought with bullets. There's wars that's fought, on pen and paper. And right now, the war that they're winning is the war with drugs, because they continue to bring drugs into the country. How many individuals in the country have suffered? How many people have died? Their own citizens are dying because their own citizens are using drugs as well. And I always hear the argument, well, if America didn't ask for it, Mexico wouldn't bring it. Okay, well, let's forget that argument and let's start doing something about it, the people that are bringing it in. And that is stop any thresholds. For the longest time, you'd have thresholds on marijuana. People, they'd come across the border with under 400 pounds that they'd get arrested in the middle of the desert. And they say it doesn't meet the threshold. Forget these thresholds. If you're bringing drugs, introducing drugs into the United States, regardless of the amount, you need to be prosecuted. It continues to happen because there's no consequences. Why do we have millions and millions of people that have crossed the border and turned themselves in and asked for asylum in the United States under this administration? Again, lack of consequences. They know that all they have to do is ask for asylum and they get released. The minute you start putting consequences for individuals creating crimes, that's when the crime will go down. And I'll give you an easy example. And obviously, this example, you and I aren't in that position because we obeyed by the laws, right? But I'm just going to say, people speed on the freeway, and when they see a police officer on the side of the road, they slow down. Not because they think they're going to cause an accident, not because they can, create injury to themselves or someone else. They slow down because they know if that police officer stops them, he's going to give them a ticket, and they're going to have to pay money for that ticket for their infraction. That's a consequence. And right now, there are no consequences when you come across the border illegally, turn yourself in and ask for asylum. The minute you put up consequences, some of these individuals stop creating those crimes, or at least they're not blatant about the crime they're committing.
Well, that sounds like a common sense, simple concept to obey by. And unfortunately, we don't have that a lot right now in our politics. So we'll finish up with this, Art. I'm going to finish up with quoting yourself, and I want your reaction to this quote. 4 more years of this, not only will every state be a border state, every state will be a chaotic state. For people that are watching this in New York, for people that are watching this in Nebraska, for people that are watching this that's not a border state like Arizona, if we keep seeing these numbers of illegal crossings, what will this country become?
Look, a lot of these individuals that are coming across the border now, they're not staying in border states. They're going further into the United States. They're not going to abide by the laws. And as we've seen, a lot of these other politicians, like in Colorado, New York, Chicago, they themselves have their heads stuck in the sand and they're ignoring the problem. Or when they even see the problem, video, pictures and everything, they say there's not a problem. If this continues, it's going to be even more chaotic. And what I mean by that is there's lawlessness across the entire board. And these people don't care. When we were seeing years ago, Mara Salvatrucha from El Salvador, which is a very, very dangerous criminal gang, come across, and they'd have all the tattoos across their faces, and people were intimidated by all that. Now we're dealing with a different type of criminal. When you look at the people from Venezuela, which are part of El Tren de Aragua, which is a criminal organization, they're not having all the tattoos. They're not having anything that shows you who they are. They are Mara Salvatrucha on steroids and drugs. That's who these people are. The days of dealing with smugglers and everything else and mom and pop organizations, they're not they're not knuckle draggers. These people run a business. Some of their kids have gone to Ivy League schools in the United States. They know exactly what they're doing, and they don't care who gets involved, who comes across. Criminals follow other criminals, and we have allowed tons of criminal entities to enter into the country. We cannot take 4 more years of this because this administration will continue to ignore that there's a problem. And artists, TV personalities, musicians, they don't care because they don't have to deal with what we have to deal with day in and day out.
That's Art Del Cueto, Vice President, National Border Patrol Council. Like I said at the top, you are one of the most knowledgeable people in America on this topic. And listen, Art, let's make a little pact here. Whoever gets elected in November, I would love to have you back on after that, like a couple of months after that person takes office in January, and talk about what changes, if any, we've seen. Because both candidates are promising changes at the border, and we need to hold them accountable.
Absolutely. And you know what? Open door policy, brother. Whenever you want to take a drive down to the border, you come down here to see me. I'll take you and I'll give you that tour myself.
I'll take you up on that. My name is Billy Harfosh, broadcasting from Dave Pratt's Star Worldwide Networks in Scottsdale, Arizona. Thank you so much for watching.